the Evolution Security Podcast.
Well, everybody, we'd like to welcome Kyle Defoor of Defoor-Proformance Shooting for a second time. We're excited about that. And how are you doing, Kyle?
I am doing good. I got a dip in and I'm drinking a beer. So
Is
I'm
that
talking to you guys.
awesome? Now, is that a Coors again?
Miller Lite.
Miller Lite. Oh, man, I got it all messed up last time. Coors.
Coors is when I'm with Pepper.
Is that a backup? Is that what you said?
No, it's when I'm hanging out with Pepper. He drinks Coors Light.
That's right. Well,
Coors Light's his primary. Miller Lite's his backup. Miller Lite's my primary. Coors Light's my backup. So I just keep off with him.
Now, wasn't there a while when you were doing Paps, or am I just mistaken on that?
Yeah, I do Paps. My local watering hole has PBR and Narragansett, believe it or not. So I'll pop into those two as well.
Nice.
Awesome. Well, I was expecting you to have a beer going, so that's awesome. Well, real quick, I'd like to refer everybody back to episode 44, our first time around with Kyle. An excellent episode and a lot of fun detail in that, but we felt like we cut you off too early on all kinds of great info, so we want to jump right in, Kyle. But before we do, why don't you give us a real quick bio so we can jump right in?
I run a little company called Defoor-Proformance. I teach pistol, carbine, CQB, scoped rifle, and a couple of other specialties to the military mostly. About 90% of my business is mil, gov. I do some LE stuff. I'm a federal contractor, so I've been doing the game for longer than most. And then I do civilian classes as well. Probably try to do about somewhere between 15 and 20 a year throughout the United States. And typically civilian classes, I do pistol, carbine, scoped, and night vision. So I'm coming off of a night vision class with the mill and then going straight to a night vision class with civilians this weekend. So at least I won't have to zero,
Awesome.
Well, and Kyle, I'd just like to comment that all those civilian classes, and we talked about this last time, you got to be quick because those sell out so fast.
Yeah. I mean, knock on wood, man. I mean, I'm very grateful for that. It does not, me and my family are very, very grateful for that. And like I say, I think it's because, I think they sell out because, people dig them. And I tell people all the time now, because I answer a bunch of emails and DMs and stuff. 2020, we were 65% repeats for civilian classes. 2021, we are at 71% repeats. So, if I say I'm going to post it, you need to get up on there. Maybe have grandma and mama trying to get on there for you too.
I think that's what I'm going to have to do is have my wife, 'cause she's a homemaker. I'm going to have her sit on the computer waiting for Kyle Defoor classes to pop in.
So she really works for a living.
Exactly. Yeah. Now she's a grandmother. Both her and myself were grandparents, and we like to hang out with the grandkids. So she's our grandkid. Goodness, that came out funny. But yeah, we've grown into that grandparents role, and so yeah, that's what she's up to.
My wife's baking cookies right now, by the way. So
nice. That's
why we're in my office. This is my office, the garage.
Yeah, I mean that's. I mean, you got a rifle next to you. You got your badass Harley in the background. It's a good
this is not staged. This is just normal pick up and drop off kind of shit.
Go ahead, Aaron.
Look at the Harley and the.
Yeah, there you go. There's the little gym.
Nice home gym.
I don't know if we redid the floor, all that crap. So
Yeah, that's changed since the last time I think.
yeah, my buddy, believe it or not, the guy who put me through sniper school, he was the senior sniper for the SEAL teams for a long time. He does garage floors, so he came over and we kind of knocked this out together, and then, we added the gym and all that shit. So COVID shit.
I know that. Oh yeah, COVID. A lot of people got home gyms during COVID. I was lucky. I had my gym before COVID because man, you couldn't hardly find any gym equipment.
No.
Yep. So I love my home gym. Well, with that said, Kyle, we talked a lot about pistol last time. Let's hit on some rifle, and I'd like to start out by saying this. I know how you feel about the Second Amendment and about liberty. The American rifleman's heritage is obviously it's probably the most important reason we have the independence that we have. So the American rifleman gained our independence. The American riflemen, along with civilians and military, have maintained that independence, and now, of course, helping to deter and continue to maintain that independence. So I'm sure that you I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm sure that you feel real strong about the rifleman. Would you agree?
Oh, hell yeah. I mean, that's, I can talk about that for the whole podcast if you want, but, there's a lot of things on that pop in my mind when you mention it. The rifle obviously has been the thing from 17 whatever to now. That's been the go, right, for Americans. Nowadays, I mean, I think the most modern thing we can look at is, now we've got 300 blackout, right? So we got 80,000 vets from the GWAT that can legally hunt everywhere with the same platform they carried in the GWAT. You know what I mean? That's kind of cool. Talking about the culture and everything. I tell guys this all the time, especially depending if I get a 5-day carbine for the military, which we do a lot. I will break them down to iron sights at some point. I consider iron sights an advanced skill. I consider a red dot more, it's easier. So I do red dot first, then irons. And if you have a kid, that's the way you need to do them too, teaching them. But interesting piece, Civil War rifle qual. You guys know what it is?
Do not.
10 rounds from the prone with the rifle rested into a 12-inch circle at 200 yards. And think about what they were shooting.
Wow.
And it's a fucking knuckleball, right? I mean, there's no rifling. There's no cone-shaped bullet. So, you think about what those guys were doing then in 1860s. Yeah, I mean, that culture, that's why I've always been a big supporter of Appleseed.
Oh yeah.
Because that's how you get people into this, and it's way easier to get people into shooting with a rifle. I started my son out with a Ruger 10/22 with a red dot on it. I actually used my old Comp M4 from the SEAL teams, and
nice.
I drilled and tapped it and made it fit a Ruger 10/22 and taught him on that. Built up the cheek pad with like some foam, because he can shoot it without ear pro. Doesn't ring his ears. There's no recoil. He sees immediate results. That's how you need to start people out. And then they get a love for it. Then now we got to, put some ear pro on because this is going to be a little louder. Now it's a M4, and then we graduate to, a 30 cal or a hunting rifle or whatever. But yeah, I mean, that's us, man. We're the only gun culture on this planet. People don't realize that.
Yeah, I heard you say that recently, and I like that a lot, and that's partially what made me think about, segueing into the discussion that way. And just like you mentioned, Appleseed, that reminds me of the owning the 500 meters.
Yeah,
the,
mile.
Exactly, and that's something I think that we should continue to push, and maybe through this show wake up a few people to that as a possibility in their own training. So,
oh yeah.
With that said, let's talk about one of your classes that you offer on the civilian side, your scoped rifle class. That's definitely something I'm looking forward to getting into at some point.
Yep.
Because frankly, I'm a decent carbine shooter. We do a lot of focus on pistol. I was, a soldier, so I feel fairly comfortable with a carbine. But getting out beyond the normal or typical carbine, I think that's something I'd really like to start focusing more again on. Your scoped rifle class, can you describe that in a nutshell, what folks should expect out of taking that class?
So here's what I tell people. I guarantee you I'll get you to 400 yards. And depending on your ammo and your barrel, I'll get you to however much, when we run out of range. So, the three things I tell people about scoped rifle, the three things that matter. Number one's the bullet. Three things that make accuracy. Bullet, number one. Number two is barrel. People say rifle, but I mean, with an AR platform, you can have a shitty lower as long as you got a real quality barrel in there. So number one, bullet. Number two, barrel. Number three, glass. Glass is not that important. It's semi-important, but if you're going to pick a shitty thing, I would spend more money on the bullet than I would on glass. And
wow.
And I answer questions all the time about people are like, I want a cheap scope, and I'm like, well, cheap is that's a you're opening up Pandora's box of answers, but there are options out there that are very affordable and very good. There are also options that I would not. I tell people it's gonna flood out. I just got done with a scope class in Wisconsin. Now we only had a 600-yard range. I got everybody back to 600 and hitting. And all that being said, here's what I tell the consumer and the people listening or watching or whatever they're doing. Scope rifle class, I was a military sniper. So went through sniper school in 96, 97. Served as a sniper in the SEAL teams in a couple different war fronts. We actually I refer to myself as a recce operator instead of a sniper just because of how the job was at DEVGRU. But, the target, man, I see a lot of people, they go to scope classes, they're shooting a target that is, it's fucking huge, man. It's unrealistic. They're giving guys false positives. The biggest target I shoot in my scope class is BC steel. That is the biggest I shoot. That is absolutely it. So BC steel, so it's a USPSA or an IPSC target. You're looking at, I believe, don't quote me on this, what is it? 24 inches tall, and I think it's 12 wide for the C-zone.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, because the whole target's 18, so I believe C-zone's 12. So when you look at a 12 by 24 target, 1 foot by 2 foot, well inside the kill zone of, you hit a man in that area with a rifle round, he's not living, because obviously that quality bullet is going to be a performance round as well. So what I did, the one I just got done with in Wisconsin, I got everybody 600. And we had 2 or 3 guns that I would consider subpar. So we have to look at percentages, right? So I tell guys, in the beginning of class, student A, your gun is going to drop off at 400. You'll be 100% at 400. Once we move from the 400-yard line, you're probably going to be at 70 or 65% hits. When we get to 600, you'll probably be at 50%. Whereas you look at my upper, and I'm not just saying it because it's my name. It's a lot of knowledge gained from me and a bunch of dudes. I just happened to build it first. I was 100% at 600 with a 10-mile-an-hour left to right wind.
Wow. And that's your KD4 upper, correct?
Yeah, that's the one that I had BCM build a few years back. And that's just, that was knowledge we get. We had that knowledge back in the 90s. It's just that we, the industry, it wasn't until that I became a pro shooter, whatever that means, that I was able to, when I was shooting for a company, and I was able to approach them and say, hey, if you do this, this is what's going to happen. And, I'll tell you straight up, the ownership at BCM was like, dude, signature guns never work. I don't know. That's like a thing in the industry that a lot of people don't know, but like signature guns have never sold. The manufacturers actually never, that I know of, have been able to recoup the money that goes into that. So I said, look, man, don't make it a whole gun. Just do the barrel. That's all I give a shit about. And, good thing about the state of Wisconsin, which I'm about to go to in another week for a big hunting trip. You've got Criterion barrels, you've got Krieger barrels, you've got BCM, you've got ADM, you've got Vortex, all within like an hour of driving in a like a pentagon shape. So you can get a lot of shit done there, and that's basically what I had BCM do is go to these barrel companies and go, hey, have them cut it like this, have them make it out of this. It is optimized for 77 grain Black Hills, but it'll shoot any bullet good. That it's a 1 to 7.7 twist is the bottom line. That's what gets the juice.
Well, and Kyle, because that is a perfect time for me to ask this question, one of my bonus questions, because that upper is on my mind. So one of your videos where you kind of show off that upper, which is an impressive video, you've got a shooter making solid hit after hit at 700, and you guys are running 77 grain. I think that you stated in the video, but I think I recognize that person, and I just wanted to know if I was right. That wouldn't happen to have been Jeff Mao, was it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, he came to a scope class, and Jeff is like a gun nerd. If people don't know that, he's like a gun nerd. I don't know.
And for our audience out there, the owner of Tenacor Holsters, one of our sponsors, and
I got one around here somewhere. There you go, Tenacor.
Awesome.
So he wanted to come to scope class. I told him, I said, hey man, just and this is what I try to tell people, because what I see a lot in the scope classes is, and I get it, I totally get it. It's like me with that thing. You know what I'm saying? It's like, that's a hobby for me. It's not my profession. I don't do it for a living. But when I buy shit, I ask the guys, what should I buy? And Jeff asked me, like what? And I told him, I said, look, dude, I'm not trying to be a dick, but just buy my upper, because it's going to be as accurate, if not more accurate, than anything you can build. And I said, I said, we'll get 600. It'd be a joke. And we did. I mean, and I believe that class you're talking about, I think that was in Texas. That was that's about 8 or 9 months ago. And that range in Texas is at the ranch. That's where Matt Shockey does Shooter Symposium. And I helped Matt with that range, both the known distance and the unknown distance range. And because I've been going to the ranch way before they started doing Symposium. And I told Matt, I was like, look, dude, build it like this, because I've seen guys make mistakes building, scope ranges. And he did exactly what I suggested, which was cool. Anyway, Jeff was, I want to say, I can't remember the wind calls back there on that particular class. We always get wind there. So it was at least 5 miles an hour, because once you pass the 600 there, it's always 5 miles an hour and up. So it would have at least been 5 miles an hour. So man, he never had a miss until, and that was all BC Steel. So, for the listener or the viewer, whoever, dude, BC Steel at 600, bro, with under a 15 power scope, you're getting to the point where your crosshairs are pretty much the width of the target, which is not a big deal. And I believe he made it to 900 before he had his first miss.
Wow.
And with the 900, we're holding, if we were holding a quarter to a half mil at 7, at 9 with the same wind, we're probably holding at least 3/4 or 1 mil. So he's off. He's way off the plate.
Well, and it was just funny when I saw that. It's been months since I saw that video.
Yeah.
And because Aaron knows Jeff real well as mm-hmm. I do, and done a lot of training with him, mixed it up with Jeff quite a bit in ECQC, and I know Jeff's voice real well. And when I heard him say, "That'll do," I'm like, man, that's Jeff Mao.
Yeah.
I thought that was hilarious. Cool. Well, I was wondering if I was correct. Well, that's neat.
That's him. That was it.
Let's take a minute to talk about Origin. Origin supports us on the path. To quote Jocko, if you listen, then you know. They produce the best jiu-jitsu gis on the market, rash guards, spats, and Jocko fuel supplements. They make t-shirts, hoodies, leather boots, and belts, with all their products made in the USA by U.S. workers, bringing manufacturing back. If you're interested in any of these Origin products, please go to our show notes and click on the affiliate link. You can also find our affiliate link on our website, evosec.org, in our blog page. Also use EVOSEC10 at checkout for 10% off.
I don't know if we were going to jump into this or not, but you just made me think of a question that a lot of people like me that are not real experienced at longer range shooting. So when someone goes to your class, are you teaching it where you're making wind calls and just making that as a hold, right or left, and
Yes.
so you're doing holds for windage. Are you doing adjustments for elevation?
Well, so it depends. So a lot of people may or may not know I shoot for Vortex as well. So, and I'm very transparent with this. I'm a BCM guy. I shoot for Vortex. I shoot for Tenacore. I shoot for Cryo Precision. I shoot for Scotto. Now, I will tell you that Vortex is light years ahead of most scope companies. If in nothing else, if people want to argue a little bit about construction and body and glass and where it comes from, there's some of those points you might could argue. But one thing you can't argue with Vortex is how generous the eye box is and the options you have on reticles. So to answer your question, if I have a student who has a scope like mine, like I use the one on my 16-inch KD4 upper, my recce gun that I teach the majority of my scope classes with. Every once in a while, I'll take this guy, and this is what I teach with military guys because they're typically always using bolt. But when I use that, if they have a 1-10 razor with a MRAD reticle with a mil dot reticle or a mil radian reticle, it holds the whole time. We don't dial. The only time I have them dial is to confirm, because once you get to once you leave the 300-yard line, you need to dial because it's hard for a lot of, and here's where smaller targets will come in. A 6-inch plate, for example, or an 8-inch plate. You need to have those guys dial because holding 2.4 versus 2.6, do you know what I mean? It's like that you're looking at a line and you're guessing where that halfway mark is. So what I do is I'll have them dial on a small piece, like a 6-inch, have them hitting it. And then now they know shit. No shit. My dope at 400 is 2.1 mils. And now I have them go back to 0 because we've already slipped turrets earlier, probably the day before. And now hold 2.1. So it actually will teach them how to do the hold, because 2.1, depending on the reticle, it looks a little different on a Night Force than it does a Vortex. It looks a little different on a Leopold than it does a Swarovski, So it's a good way to have them do it. But when I do the hack wall for scoped rifle, the hack wall is all on holds. And I'm the one calling wind for all the students because typically I'm the most experienced guy with calling wind. I never dial wind. I mean, dialing wind is kiss of death. I mean, there's no need for that. But you can, with the proper reticle, you don't need holds. I mean, you don't need to dial. You can do holds. I mean, really, out to 600 is pretty cake. Past that, depending on the reticle, what ends up happening, and you get to the bottom of the reticle on some of these scopes where you're, now it's like shit. You're holding so high, it's hard to see the target, or the reticle has really wide stadia lines. And it makes sense now probably for that guy to dial. The MOA guys, there's not a lot of reticles for the MOA guys that they can hold consistently the whole time, because they end up with such big numbers is the bottom line. And having to find those numbers quickly is sometimes a little bit of a pain. I wish MOA would just go away, but
yeah, and I was just about to say that. And again, part of this is for listeners that don't have a lot of knowledge in this as well. And that's what I was going to say. I assume you're a mill guy all the way, I'm sure.
Oh my God, mill turret, mill reticle. It is. I cannot tell you. I mean, dude, it ain't hundreds of students. It's thousands that literally have thanked me. They're like, oh my God, because what we consider easy where I come from, a lot of people they're getting the info off the internet, which is not a bad place. I mean, you have a computer in your pocket, right? So, I mean, use it. But at the same time, it's like how it's being put out, and then the application of it can, I mean, I've seen guys get so frustrated in a scope class. I have seen guys in a scope class, and I'm not shitting you, literally buy a scope while we're in class. They're on their phone, and it's like day one, like at 1:00 in the afternoon, and they're like, fuck this. And I'm not the guy where I don't tell people at the beginning of class, like, your gear is shit. It's going to be a fucking nightmare. I don't do that. I just say, hey man, here's what we're going to do. And I'm going to work with you, and we'll figure it out. But at a certain point, what they see is they see me and they see the other guys who are mill, and they're like, my God, these guys are like bing, 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 bing. And they can't do that, At a certain point, the calculator's got to be brought out, for MOA, man. You got to start adding, you got to start dividing and all that shit. Hell,
that's actually what made me, and in the early days, and again, I don't want to feign that I'm a rifle expert at all, but it's like, man, why would I want to have a mixed reticle where I'd have to have these interchanging calculations? I mean, it just makes perfect sense just to go with mill, and plus all the military lessons learned with those reticles.
Yeah.
To me, just like with medical, the military has a lot of great lessons learned. So,
but
yeah,
it's a no-brainer. I'll take a guy. I've had guys that have, when I went through school, man, we had mill diets and we had MOA turrets. I mean, that's just the way it was until basically Todd Hotnut came along and, basically got us all, he's like, you guys are, you're killing yourselves. But I'll take a guy and I will make him better with what he has, period. I've had guys who've had German posts. I don't know if you guys know what that is, but and they're like, how the hell am I going to do a hold with a German post? And I'm like, well, we're gonna take a minute, and this is why none of my classes are ever the same. And it's not just scoped; it could be pistol or carbine. You have to base, if you're going to be a good professional shooter, like a real professional shooter or trainer or whatever word you want to use. You have to make it best for the class that you have. You might have a dozen guys that are shooting 95 slow fire out of the gate with pistol at 8:05 on day one. Well, obviously, we're going to start doing hack quals at 8:30. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got to be ready to do that. You can't just have your little curriculum that you're going to read off of. So what I do in the scope classes is I'll take a guy with a German post and I'll be like, hey, dude, we're going to figure out how many mils is your German post. Now I'm going to have to use my scope and I'm going to have to drop down beside him on a target and I'm going to have to figure that out and maybe take a Sharpie and do some shit. But once I figure it out, I'm like, okay, your post is 0.02 mils wide. So now he can kind of figure out like, well, there's 2, there's 4, there's 6. You see what I'm saying? Like we can redneck it to a point. We can take mil diets, which we were doing this when I went through school in the 90s. We can take a mil diet and we can dial again. Now here's where you're getting into this. Some of the listeners might be like, dude, he's losing me. But if you have a zero stop, you can't do this. But if you don't have a zero stop, once we slip turrets, we can dial under 0, which means I can make my baseline 0, not the crosshairs. I can make it 2 mil dots under, 3 mil dots under, 4 mil. And now I've got this guy where he can hold unders, which typically a mil dot guy is going to run out of juice on that eventually, unless we do that. So these are things that, along with the what I would consider normal recce operator skills that I try to put into the class. I mean, obviously it's 2 days, so I can't do everything, but the biggest thing is wind calls. Besides the shooting, wind calls and trace. If I can get them to see wind calls and trace, and dude, man, we were in Wisconsin. I'll give you, like, it rained both days. So calling wind was hard because when it rains like that, typically there's no wind unless it's a storm. So getting them to see mirage, it was very difficult, but we had really good trace on the afternoon of day 1 because the way the sun was poking through the clouds. And once I see that on my spot and scope, what I'll do is I will load up a 30-round magazine because I know my shit's doped in. And not to be a dick, but I ain't gonna miss. Not at 400, 500. That's not fucking happening. And I'll drop down. I'll have those guys I'll line up the spotting scope behind me, and I don't let them adjust it. So for focus and for magnification power on the spotter, and I'm on like a Vortex Radian tripod. Like it don't move. It won't move in a 15-mile-an-hour crosswind. It's heavy. I've got a 60 power spotting scope, and I will shoot and have every student rotate through until they see trace. And I explain to them exactly what they're looking for. And then once they see it, it's kind of like, it's like a fucked up picture. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. You know what I mean? You're like, and now I've kind of got them. I got them to where they can help out their shooting partner.
So let me step in here and because I've read a bit about wind calling and when you're saying trace, I'm assuming you're talking about seeing the bullet travel.
Yes.
Or
some people call it vapor trail. Military, we use the term trace, vapor trail, whatever. The essentially what you're looking at is you're looking at a projectile breaking the sound barrier. That's essentially what's happening. That's what you're looking at. And once the different calibers are it's very interesting. Most of your military snipers, because we've done so many calibers, even when in service, we shoot so many different rifles. For the guys that are watching this on video, 300 blackout, 5.56, 6.5 Creedmoor.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's interesting to watch that. It's really good in classes if we have multiple calibers. Typically in a scoped rifle class, I'll have 5.56 and 308. Every once in a while, if I'm doing a military job near my next civilian scope class, I'll take my 6.5, and let the students see that. And it's amazing the reaction of a student when they see a 6.5.
Well, and Kyle, I'm sorry, but I didn't mean to cut you off. Speaking of 6.5, I got 2 comments because you made me grin a little bit with your description about trace. I'll never forget the time where I actually saw trace for the first time, and especially in doing some of the PRS matches. I've only shot a couple of them. Is where you really got the opportunity with good glass, good spotting scopes to watch that parabola of the bullet go in. And you're right, man. I'd see 308, the drastic difference. It's probably not drastic, but quite a difference between 308 trajectory and that 6.5 Creedmoor. Pretty impressive. But yeah, just the fact that you can watch that parabola as it's tracing in and bang, hit that steel. Pretty cool.
The hit. I'll call the hit starting at 400, 400, 500, 600, 700, 800. I'll call the hit on 5.56 and above between 1.5 and 2.5 seconds before you hear a ding. I'll call a hit or miss.
Cool.
And once the students can do that, it's like, see, they don't realize, and I'm not saying they're stupid. I'm just saying that it takes them a half a day to go, holy shit, I'm calling hits and misses before it even gets down there. It's like, yeah, that's great.
Wow.
Add wind, subtract wind, add elevation, subtract elevation, whatever.
So bringing back up wind. So what, besides the trace, and then you mentioned mirage. So you basically teach them to see mirage, and then maybe foliage, or what other kind of wind tools do you use downrange?
So foliage is not good. I'll tell you right now. Leaves on trees and stuff like that. That one will fuck you over. Depending on, especially terrain. Anytime you have a depression or a bowl, trees always will go back to center, no matter which way they blow. Right. That's not a good one. You can pull off stuff like sawgrass and cattails because they're softer and they'll typically lay with the direction of the wind a little bit longer. That's man, you need some experience. You need some time under your belt for that one. Mirage is king daddy by far.
Oh,
I mean,
cool.
Now I say that, but like when we were in Wisconsin, it was raining, and when I said there's no wind with rain, I mean I'm talking about in the context of shooting. What ended up happening is the wind. We ended up having this 5 to 8 mile an hour wind. Less than 10, more than 5, less than 10. So what ends up happening is the rain ends up at an angle. And so a lot of those guys, I was able to show them the wind speed off of what the rain looks like in their optic.
Excellent.
And this is all this that we're talking about is astronomically easier with a spotting scope. And again, man, Vortex is, I've got, I can see the future with spotting scopes I got. I mean, they are primo.
We love our Vortex
it's
optics
way more
for sure.
difficult when you go to binos, and it's really hard with your scope. Now, all that being said, on the military side, I will take the time with the military guys to where basically we run exercises to where you have to call wind and you have to call trace out of your scope, which is I would not even. That's almost impossible for me to get to in a 2-day class with people who've never done it before. But guys who've been through a military sniper school, they've seen it enough to where I can show them little tricks to where they can pick it up. And if you can start calling it through your scope, you are on another level, man. You're. But again, you're going to have a scope. Now, go back to the first thing I was telling you, where what makes accuracy? Bullet barrel scope. That's accuracy. That's shooting. What makes good observation, what makes good wind calls, and what makes good trace calls is a real high quality piece of glass. I mean, like, you need to have some serious good glass. I mean, nothing crazy, but it needs to be quality.
Well, these are all excellent tips, and that's precisely what I wanted to kind of get out of this, is so that number one, we could understand what to expect, because this is one of the classes that's the top of my list, especially in rifle, but also for newer shooters that are interested in getting into rifle shooting, but don't know what to expect in a class, and also what they don't know.
Yeah.
So yep. So, Kyle, kind of moving into a little bit of gear discussion. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I do seem to feel like maybe the AR platform with the 77 grain is something that you like and students use a lot. I'll preface the question this way, because I wish when I built my 308 that I would have built a 6.5.
Same.
I'm gonna build one anyway, but it's like, man, why didn't? Because when I shot these PRS matches, I was like, immediately, I'm like, why didn't I build a 6.5? I knew people were doing it, and I knew I should have, but
Yep.
setting up, let's say, a budget, and when I say budget, I'm not talking about cheap.
Yep.
I'm not talking about, I'm talking about using the principle cry once or buy once, cry once with both a budget and a medium priced rifle. What would you really recommend? I know that's opening up a big can of worms.
Let me grab
We can either keep. Go ahead, Aaron.
And you're talking about two different. You're talking about a lower end budget and then a mid range kind of thing.
Yes. Yep.
Two different rifles.
A budget rifle and a mid range rifle. Again, with the premise of buy once, cry once.
Are we talking about AR?
So how do you want to do it? Do you want to name two in AR platform and maybe two in a bolt gun?
That sounds cool.
Yeah. I mean, so here's the thing. At a certain point, you gotta. This bleeds into like a mindset discussion, and I do a mindset pretty much in every class. I don't do it in a lot of the military classes because a lot of those guys are, they kind of know it already. But you need to have a sit down with yourself, and you need to say, okay, what's too expensive? Do you know what I mean? You can pull off with an AR. If you want a budget AR, first thing I would do is get a 16-inch barrel, because when you go down to 14.5 or you go down to 10.5 or 11.5, you're losing so much muzzle velocity starting at about the 300, you call it the 400 yard line, really 300. It's going to be hard to come back from that, and so I out of the gate get a 16-inch so you can get distance. The stainless steel barrels are going to be a little bit more accurate than a carbon steel barrel, just the properties of the steel. It's just going to be, stainless steel is going to be more accurate. So you can get from multiple manufacturers, you can get a 16-inch stainless steel barrel with a 1-to-8 twist, which is 1-to-8 is kind of that's kind of the fire and forget twist that most manufacturers do with a stainless steel barrel. And I can get you to 600 plus yards with 5.56, but I'm going to need you to buy a quality bullet. Like
the 77 grain Black Hills stuff.
77 grain Black Hills listen, it's just king. People, I've seen this argued on the internet for 20 fucking years. The thing is that Black Hills, without opening up that discussion for an entire podcast, it's a proprietary bullet, it's proprietary powder. It's not going to happen. It's just not. People are not going to be able to get that kind of accuracy. Now, people will claim that IMI or Hornady or what, it's just as accurate. Well, until we get to the 900 yard line. Do you know what I'm saying? So I would hit your big manufacturers, your BCMs, your Daniel Defenses, your Noveskis. There's three right there that I know make a 16-inch with a 1-to-8 twist. That upper is going to be within a couple $100 of any upper. So that would be your quote unquote budget. If you wanted to go high end, my upper is going to be hard to beat because it's optimized for that heavy bullet. And throughout the military, we've gone up to 85 grain, 87 grain, 89 grain, 90 grain, and we always come back to that 77. It's the primo thing. I mean, AMU figured that out in the 90s, and basically JSOC, we just stole it from them. A lot of people don't even know that. AMU was shooting the 77 grain bullet in the early 90s. All we did was go and get it and then say, hey, let's make it into a performance round, turn it into a hollow point so that terminal ballistics are good. And that's what really happened with it. I mean, so that would be the budget one and the quote unquote high end one, I guess you would say. I would tell guys I like a mid-length gas system simply because, a lot of people say felt recoil softer, and that's true. But I mean, if you've got a gem, you can recoil's not a problem anyway. But it is a little bit softer. But the biggest thing is, I think it's a little bit easier on parts. But both bolt carrier and bolt. I've actually never replaced a BCM bolt or bolt carrier in my entire time being with that company, which is saying something.
Wow.
I'm 30,000 plus a year, 5.56. So, and there's been a couple years where I've hit 50,000. So,
yeah, Aaron and I are BCM guys for sure.
I mean, and there's great company. I mean, listen, Noveski makes a great gun, man. I mean, that's the gun tier 1 guys are carrying right now. So,
and really, when it comes down to it, that's what we choose. But we're agnostic for the most part. We just want people to buy quality.
Yeah, just as long as it works. So, I mean, one thing I would say too on the gear thing is like when guys are like, I can't afford this or whatever. I'm like, well, then why did you put a fucking $2,000 exhaust on your Ford F-150?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah,
don't drink beer for a month. I mean, you know what I mean? Like there's places you can find this stuff if you look,
depends on what your priorities are, right?
Now, so the budget for the AR, the high end for the AR, there's not a big difference. The gap is not that big.
That makes sense.
When you go to a bolt gun, the gap is big. The gap becomes a gap. It's the fucking Grand Canyon. It's a big gap. But here's what I'll tell you. Most any of the military snipers that are in this industry right now that are working as a pro will validate this statement. I can take a person who's never shot a rifle in their life, and this is not me. This has nothing to do with Kyle Defoor. Bill Rapier can do it. Any military sniper worth his salt can do it. And I can have them shoot a 1,000 yard target in one day. Give me 8 to 10 hours. I will have them shooting a 1,000 yard target, BC steel, as long as it's 6.5 Creedmoor. Now I could do it with 6.5. I could do it with PRC. That's not a problem, but I can do it. That should tell the audience how good that bullet is, because it ain't all me, man. And to be honest with you, you can go to Walmart and buy a 6.5 pretty much from anybody, from Savage, from Ruger, from anybody. Put a damn bipod on it. As long as you buy a quality bullet, supersonic, of course, it's not a problem. That bullet is that good. You cannot do that with 308. That is not possible. Because once you get to the 800 yard line, the wind call with 308 is going to become dramatic.
Yeah, I absolutely was, again, like I said earlier in the show, was kicking myself in the ass when I shot these PRS matches with how much easier of a time the shooters had with the 6.5 Creedmoor. Now, granted, you got 6.5 and 6 Dasher and all these slightly newer cartridges, but to me, why go beyond 6.5 Creed when, especially I'm not going to get, I've got friends that are so into PRS. I've got more important things, my jiu-jitsu, my other, the other pistol shooting aspects that are more important to me than diving that deep into long range shooting.
Yep.
But man, a 6.5, like you said, you can buy it anywhere now.
And don't discount 260 Remington, which is essentially the same thing as 6.5. Now, right now, it's December of 2021. You're probably going to find quality match grade 6.5 easier than you're going to find quality match grade 260. And I'm talking about in your box stores, in your Dick's Sporting Goods, and your local place. But there may be, you go, there's always these little pockets in the country where guys are like, hey man, we got 260 Remington running out our ass. And I'm like, rock on, it's basically the same damn gun.
Well, so as far as, let's just kind of hit on two that you would recommend as far as bolt guns, starting with the budget, but still not crying about, spending a little bit. But yeah,
honestly, I would, literally the ones you see in the magazines, like the Savage, the 110. I think it's the Savage 110. Adjustable AccuTrigger with it. You can't go wrong with any Remington product. Of course, Remington's kind of, I guess, on the way out or whatever. But honestly, man, a bolt gun. The Tikas are superb. I mean, Tika's like that. I don't know. It's like the one nobody really knows about, kind of. But the guys who know. You know what I'm saying? We put to you like this: KRG, who makes the chassis for my 6.5, they make a point to make chassis for the Tika Action. So that should tell you something. And those are a bunch of SF snipers that own that company. So again, military trained snipers that they know what the fuck they're doing.
And that chassis isn't very expensive for what you get out of it.
These things are like, I tell people all the time, man, that, like, I can't wrap my mind around why a guy doesn't have a KRG. And listen, I don't have a dog in the fight with KRG. They don't give me shit. All that was paid for. So, but it's so modular and it's so good. And to be able to buy a chassis like that locks up like it does, it essentially gets you to the point where you've got a semi-custom bedded rifle. And by the way, it's way lighter than stock. And the most important thing is, if you look at this one, adjustable cheek piece, adjustable length of pull. Depending, if you buy a bone stock Remington 700 or Tika, they have bolt lifts for it that just, clamp on. Bipod attachment for the Harris bipods, which makes it so that it's not so high. That's one thing about the ARs that kill me right now, is a lot of people will show up to class and they've got this crazy ass bipod and like a 1-inch block coming off their rail. So they've got a 6-inch bipod, which is correct. But then because of the 1-inch block and the attachment system, it's at 8.5 inches, and they can't get low enough for a prone shot. You know what I'm saying? The other advantage out of KRG is the damn the slings. Because here's the deal: you buy any of these rifles that we're talking about, and I'm being serious when I say go to Walmart and buy the damn thing. But the sling is going to be an undermount. You know what I mean? You're back in fucking 1776, man. You got to have a side mount. So,
yeah, you've convinced me, and I had seen that chassis quite a while back, and when I saw you speak highly of it, it made me really look close at them. For $350, $400, depending on which one you're getting, and that's at least during this time frame. But man, with having all the adjustments, you can't get that on a regular on a chassis for less than $1,000.
Yeah,
So yeah, I'm sold on that. For sure.
Don't eat lunch for a month. There it is, right there. Do you know what I mean? That's Hey, listen, I have to say this real quiet, because my wife's in there baking cookies. But when I buy parts for that thing, that's it. Don't eat lunch for like a month. It's like $300.
Hey, and you get intermittent fasting in, right?
Intermittent fasting. I mean, it's not that hard. Now, as far as the high end on the bolt gun, my buddy Bill Rapier, Amtac Shooting. Bill is like, he's part of the tribe. Me and Bill went through buds together. We were both 18 years old, same buds class, graduated. He went to the West Coast, I went to the East Coast. And then we saw each other again when we went through selection at DEVGRU. We were in the same selection class for DEVGRU. We made that, served together at the same command. Bill turned me on to Altus. So Altus is who built this 6.5. So ALTUS. They're out of Florida. This guy can build a fucking bolt gun. And I mean, like, dude, it's ridiculous. It is. So that's the high end. That's what I would tell guys. If you want a quality bolt gun, I don't give a shit what caliber. You want to go 300 Win Mag, that's fine. I mean, 300 Win Mag's what I carried in the SEAL teams. Love it. A lot more felt recoil than 6.5. Pretty much the same flight pattern as 6.5. And there is some debate out there, which I would probably agree with, that 300 Win Mag terminally is probably a little bit better right now. I've got some buddies out west that hunt mule deer and elk with a 300 Win Mag, and they have no issues. But Altus would be the way I would tell people to go. And I would also tell them that if you're going that high end route, I would call Altus up and talk to John, and I would say, hey man, like I want a carbon fiber barrel from Proof Research. Proof Research, interestingly enough, they one of the guys that works there was the armorer at DEVGRU when I was there, and he's retired now, and he works for Proof. That carbon fiber barrel, that whole gun right there, as it sits, is 9 pounds.
Wow.
That's with the
with optics,
with scope, with bipod. That's a 9-pound gun. That is, I mean,
unheard of, man.
Might be,
now that's
like some people might not understand that. That is insane for a 6.5 Creedmoor. Now I cut it down to 16 inches, which, Proof was like, we had to go through the email chain, right? I told Altus, I'm like, I want a 16-inch carbon fiber. And they're like, well, they make 20-inch or whatever. And I'm like, no, I want a 16. So there was like, is it a typo? Is Kyle crazy? Is he had too many beers? And I'm like, no, because I'm not worried about, 1,500 yards and all that shit. I want 1,000, 1,200 pretty consistently. And I'm fine with that. And plus I'm losing a lot of weight and it's easier to pack. And when I'm hunting with it, it's shorter, et cetera. But that would be what I would tell guys for the high end.
Well, and Kyle, those are great examples, and I'll just add this: you're wanting to use that rifle for hunting and for precision work, so it meets both realms.
Yeah,
is what I understood. Well, and I'll put that in the show notes too, just so people have something to click on and go check out. We definitely want to push folks that way based on your recommendations, and I'll say this real quick, because there might be some of the newer shooters. Let's just give them your baseline option for scopes. Just give us maybe 2 of them.
Okay.
Maybe on the low end and maybe on the medium side.
I tell you, man, here's what I tell guys with a bolt gun. This guy right here is hard to beat, and here's why. This is the lightest 15 power scope that I know of. It's a Vortex Razor HD LHT 3-15. Unbelievably lightweight. With a 6.5, you want to be at 15x. There is always the possibility of people overscoping. I see it a lot with M4s or with ARs. When people show up to a scope class with an AR, you'll have a guy with a damn 18 power scope. His objective lens is so big, he's had to mount the thing really, really high to clear the rail on the front. Now he can't get a cheek weld, but his parallax is all screwed up even when he has a parallax adjustment, and it's kind of a shit show. So I am a big fan of that scope. I'm a big fan of that scope for everything, and they make versions of it. I believe they make a 20. I want to say it's a 4-22. People would have to check out the website. It might be a 4-25, but that would be what I tell my guys, my Western people. The guys that are, your Colorado, Wyoming, Idaho cats who are, no shit, they're taking. I think the average shot in Idaho last year on elk, the average shot was like 250 or 260. So that means there's a shit ton of shots at 400. So you're gonna need some glass, and the problem is when you go up in magnification, you're going up in weight. So you want to try to find something, and this thing is pretty damn affordable. I want to say retail on this is probably $1,500. So. Big fan
for what you're getting. That's not bad.
No, and then if you're on the AR side, the Razor 1-10 it's really hard to beat. I mean, it's because it makes your AR work in the spectrum of the caliber. Because you have true 1 power and a daytime visible red dot, you can literally do CQB with it, and you're not losing anything. And then you have 10x, which I don't know that I'd go higher than 10x on an AR. I don't think you really need it. You're getting to a point where even on a hot day, you're going to see mirage off your barrel. and yeah, people say, well, I'm going to wrap it and all. It's just, you get to a point where it's like you're creating a lot of problems that you don't really need. So I'm a big fan of the Razor HD 1-10 for the AR platform, the Razor HD LHT for the bolt guns. That's kind of where I try to keep it simple.
Nice. Little kiss in there. Well, Kyle, man, that's excellent recommendations and great discussion on your class. I'm sure that you've given our audience a lot of great things to think about for sure. Let's talk about Keeper's Concealment. They are the original authority on Appendix holsters and Appendix training, offering high-performance handgun training, specializing in concealed carry performance. Keeper's Concealment is also a proud affiliate of CCWsafe, the truly proven legal service membership company offering dedicated legal defense. Heaven forbid you're forced to use lethal force. Use code KC10OFF and check them out at ccwsafe.com/keepers. To buy a holster, sign up for a class, inquire about hosting a course, or join CCWsafe, you'll find it all at keepersconcealment.com. So let's hit on some of your time in the SEAL teams, and specifically, let's talk about Operation Anaconda. And would you like to hit on a couple of the let's just say eventful times in Anaconda for you? And can you describe the operation with a little bit of summary so that some that don't know what it was, if
Yeah,
you can do that first?
Operation Anaconda was the very first big military-wide operation in the GWAT. It was in March of 2002 in Afghanistan. Essentially, we had a very large concentration of Al-Qaeda and Taliban in the Shaykhut Valley, which is right on the Paki border, east of Gardez, and it's a bowl-shaped valley. Probably call it. I'm having to remember back here. I've never read any of the books that are written about it on purpose, so I just go off of memory. I want to say we were about 4,000 yards by probably 6,000 yards. It was a decently sized piece of terrain. You had two very large mountains on either side. If you think of it more like this, a horseshoe would be a better visual for the listener. And at the two ends of the horseshoe, like midway up, were two high peaks. One of those was Takugar. Another one was kind of inconsequential because it was so far away, and we knew that there were no people over that area. So, the plan was for the 82nd Airborne to come in, the Raksan division, to come in and kind of clean up that valley. Of course, initially we were going to put recce, reconnaissance forces in there, take a look at it, see what we had, and then bring those guys in. This all happened between the last day of February of that year. I can't remember if it was 28 or 29. I don't know. And probably, I think it ended about March 9 or 10, somewhere in there. Our responsibility for the team that I was on was reconnaissance. So we put a recce team in early. Actually, our brothers down south were the Delta guys had a recce team heading in there, and they had been busy for a while, had been up for a while. So we put a recce team in there. That was not my team. That team went in on the 28th or 27th, whatever it was. My team went in on the whatever the last day in February was. And it became apparent on the first day that this was a busy place. We knew that we needed more recce teams and a little more time to do what we needed to do before Rakkasan came in. So we called in another recce team. Well, let me back up. So the two recce teams from my command, we were in there. Well, the first team was in there from like the 27th to maybe, I don't know, say March 2 or 3. And they extracted, again, been up for a while doing other stuff, ran out of ammo. They got in a little contact, ran out of ammo. They found a forward position from Al Qaeda. They killed all those guys. They ended up kind of bouncing because they needed to get back, get some ammo, get some food, get some water, all that shit. We ended up staying in there, the team I was with, from that last day in Feb till we didn't get pulled out till the 8th. So in that time, we, a lot of call for fire. I mean, a lot. Every available platform in the U.S. inventory we used. So we found everything. We found, mortar positions. We found, hardened positions, guys in buildings, guys in cars, you name it. The shit you come in the SEAL teams for. That's what I would tell people. So we had not taken the high ground yet. Takugar was the high ground. The reason, in explaining to people, especially nowadays, because you've got a generation now that doesn't understand the terrain of Afghanistan. It is, I think most of us would go on record as saying it is the toughest terrain on the planet, because you're essentially the Hindu Kush. I mean, you're basically in the foothills of the Himalaya. It's very difficult to make movement. We knew we had to take the high ground of Takugar. The team I was with, we were not really near it. We were a few clicks away, but we had a very good view of the valley. So we were cleaning up pretty nicely. But, typical military stuff, you need to have that high ground. So the third recce team, which was going to come in, but we're the only team there at this particular time, call it March 2 or 3 till March 4, March 5. They are going to come in and take Takugar. That team does an overflight. They send satellites over. They send a Spectre over. They send a Predator over to look at the top of that mountain. Is there anybody there? And this is all documented. I mean, it's now a lot of this, hindsight, of course, later lessons learned in the war. Nothing came back and said that there were any people there, which is a very important fact that post, I would call it 2005, 6, 7, 8. A lot of people are forgetting these facts. I mean, we had our best technology looking at the top of that mountain, and they said there is nobody there. The problem with weather came in. We were already at 10,000 feet. It's March, so it's still snowing. And H hour for Rakkasan to come in is getting close. So the team leader for that particular team made the call with not by himself, with everybody, with the Army, with everyone. Hey, we're just gonna go in and basically land on top because nobody's there. That way we can go ahead and establish a footprint there. We got high eyes on. We'll start crushing anything that our team can't see just because of terrain or whatever. And that's the call they made, and that's the call that everybody agreed with. Now, on insert, they're coming in on final in a 47. One of the operators, everybody comes off ICS, everybody on clips, ramps open. One of the operators is looking out the window with his nods, and he sees a couple of goats hanging in a tree, which obviously we know that, they eat goat like we eat chicken, so we know there's people there. He makes the call to the team leader and the crew chief, hey, abort, we need to get out of here, there's people here. Bird starts to lift back off. They take an RPG in the side. The RPG is close enough that it doesn't arm. So if you understand that, I think it's 27 yards for an RPG. So sub 25 yards. So it's basically just like a big fucking bullet. It hits the bird and hits a couple of hydraulic lines. So hydraulic fluid starts spilling on the inside of the bird. the crewmen on the ramp, and all crewmen, the TF-160 guys, they're tethered in, they're tied in for just this kind of thing. He slips on hydraulic fluid and falls out of the bird. Our guy who's closest to him, Fifi, Neil Roberts, kind of reaches for him, just habit, but of course Fifi's already unhooked, and Fifi ends up slipping and falls out of the bird. He falls out, call it sub 10 feet into the snow. He's got his rucksack on. He's carrying a saw at the time, parasaw, what we used, a Mark 46, and he's got about 1,000 rounds of ammo on him. So he's heavy. He falls, bird lifts off. The bird crash lands in front of us in the valley. Now we're up on the ridge, but it comes in front of us. Controlled landing, I should say, crash. Fifi hits his strobe on his helmet, starts fighting, and the team leader now on that bird calls in another bird to come pick him up. So they get picked up by another bird. They go back to Gardez. The crashed helo is sitting in the middle of the valley right now. They know they're down a man. We hear all this on the radio, of course. Those guys kind of reconstituted Gardez really quickly. Gardez is a 10-minute flight, not even, from where we're at. So they come back in, and now it's kind of a quote-unquote, kind of a combat search and rescue, if you will, to get this guy back, get Fifi back. So they come in again. Second time, the bird gets shot up again, this time with small arms fire and RPGs. The TF guys, which I would, I'll go to my grave saying those are the best pilots on the fucking planet. I would not be alive if it wasn't for some of them. They airland. They shit can the boys off. The boys get off the ramp, start taking contact immediately. This is essentially sub 40-yard gunfight from the go. The bird is shot up, but it is able to limp off, and it limps back to Gardez. Really good job by the TF pilots. By the way, that TF pilot was the same one whose bird crashed to begin with. He volunteered to go back in.
Nice.
So
Awesome.
that should tell you about TF-160. So now we've got our guys up there on the mountain in a really good firefight. The AQ guys up there. So now what we didn't know, and what we didn't find out until days later, they had essentially dug. If you think of World War II trenches, that's what they had, and they had with the veg that was around the area, because we were just above tree line, but there were still some trees there, not a lot. They were able to conceal these trenches, and that's why the overhead for the Spectre and the Predator and the satellites never saw anybody, and they never saw any evidence of humans. So they're in these hardened positions, bunkered positions, with PKMs, AKs, you name it. There's no real, we don't really know how many bad guys were up there. The estimates are probably 15 to 25, somewhere in there. So that's a pretty formidable force, especially.
And like you said, in a hardened position.
They're in hardened positions, and it's literally not quite horseshoe shaped. So they have interlocking fields of fire, and our guys are landing in the middle of it. So those guys out of the gate, one guy gets shot in the ankle. One of my best friend at the time. So he's now non-ambulatory. They start this really aggressive fight, trying to get inside the bunkers, and basically, if you want to think about doing, CQB in a bunker, that they're trying to get to that point because they know they got to get rid of these problems. The 60 gunner that they had, we say 60 gunner. I mean, it's a Mark 48. It's a belt fed 7.62. He is doing a real good job of laying down, some heavy fire. He ends up getting shot in one leg and fragged in another leg with a frag grenade. So now you got him wounded. We had an Air Force combat controller with that team named John Chapman. John Chapman gets shot very early on, and there's a lot of I think still unknowns about exactly what happened with John. I wouldn't want to opine on that because I wasn't there at that particular moment. I was, a couple clicks away. But so John is essentially from everybody that's there is dead. Turbo is wounded. The other guy, BM, is wounded, and so the team leader makes a call to break contact. So they break contact, come down the mountain. They did call for a QRF, and this is where again early lessons that we just didn't. Later in the war, these things were obviously fine tuned, but there was a radio communication problem on who was on what net. And again, this is not a blame thing. This is more of a fog of war at the time, if you will. The Ranger QRF gets called in, but they do not get the word that they are going into a hot LZ. They just get the word that, hey, we're going to land. There's, the toad men need a little help. Which is this is all a very interesting thing when you think about 10 years later when Extortion 17 went down. It was the exact opposite. The Rangers were in a bad way. They called for a QRF from our guys, and our guys kind of went in there and didn't know what was happening. And 17 got shot down. Everybody died. So the team is breaking contact to get off the mountain. The sun is now starting to come up. So you got a bunch of guys, bad guys without night vision, who are doing a pretty good job anyway because they know they have interlocking fields of fire in a very short area. And now the sun's starting to come up, so now they can fucking see, which this is not good. The Ranger QRF lands. That bird. So now let's go back in time now. We got one bird sitting in the valley. It's shot up. It's disabled. We've got a second bird that got shot up and is no longer a working helo. It's back at Gardez. We have a third bird that comes in with the Ranger QRF. For the listeners, that's Chuck Pressburg from Pressburg Consulting. That was his team. So they come in. They don't know what they're landing into. The bird air lands, same exact spot, comes off the ramp. One of the Rangers, I think it was, and don't quote me on the names, I think it was Kroos, got shot. He was still on the bird when he got shot, or one of them was. I think it was Kroos. And then two other guys get shot coming off the ramp. So you got 3 dead Rangers out of the gate. The minigunner for the 47, he got shot. I think both pilots got wounded. I don't know if it was frag from being shot or actual bullets. And so the Ranger team leader realizes he's in a shit sandwich. And those guys essentially, and I'm fast forwarding all this for the listener, they end up being there for about 18 hours. Hell of a job. There was a guy, the team leader was Nate Self. He was the captain with that Ranger battalion. He was the team leader there on the ground. Jason Cunningham was another guy who got killed there. He was a PJ, Air Force PJ attached to those guys. He was killed. Jason would have probably lived had we could have got him out, but it just at that point, the higher command's like, we're not putting any more birds in there. It's not happening, So those guys ended up hanging out there for about 18 hours. They called in some danger close air. We were we could see them, but we were not comfortable with dropping bombs because we couldn't see them that well, and we left it up to their own guys to call in their own support, and they did. They did a really good job of that. I cannot remember that Air Force guy's name. I think Gabe Brown might have been his name. Can't really remember. It's been 20 years ago almost. But 18-hour shit show for those guys. They put a hurting on the AQ guys there. They between our guys initially doing, killing a few guys, and then those guys coming in, killing a few guys. And then by the time at the end of that 18 hours with the danger close airstrikes, they pretty much wipe out everything on that mountain. So those guys get extracted 18 hours later. That bird, the hulk of that bird, the shell is left up there. By that time, this is now March 5th. So Fifi's dead, Chappie's dead, Cunningham's dead, Croce is dead, Commons is dead, and Spytek is dead. And those are the Rangers.
Goodness.
And so they get extracted, and we still have not brought in Rakkasan yet. The 82nd still has not come into the valley floor. So now you're looking at this calamity that's happened, and the overall mission has still not been done. So by the time Rakkasan rolls in, I don't remember the exact day. I'm sure it's written in some book somewhere. My team ends up staying in there, and I say my team, I was not the team leader, but we ended up staying in there until March 8th, I believe. They would not come and get us at all, so we stayed until March 8th, cleaning up the rest of that valley. Doing what we could do to support those guys. We ended up supporting the Rakkasan guys pretty well. As shitty as it was, they didn't really have an option. They had to insert on the valley floor and basically fight up. So we kept, we kept our thing going for a few days after that. In essentially the same position. We moved a little bit, not much. And it ended up that it worked out. We crushed a lot of AQ in that area. The big man was not there that we know of. If he was, he got away. We ended up doing a 17-click exfil on foot out of there.
Wow.
In the Hindu Kush, because we're not going to lose any more birds. So that was an interesting, definitely probably the highlight, if you want to call it that, of my career. I mean, I lost a lot of friends, but we did some other good stuff there too. I was involved in a couple of good targets, a couple of good ambushes that were really, again, what you come in the SEAL teams for. Like straight up, our squadron versus, or our two troops versus, 20 bad guys, and we won with no casualties, shit like that. That was some good stuff we did too. Some other hits, but Anaconda was a lot of lessons learned, man. And definitely things that I think later generations of both the Ranger Regiment, the TF guys, and our crew, a lot of stuff that just stuff that a lot of people would not even probably wrap their mind around. Aircraft load, that was a big one. We probably could have brought more guys in had we done the aircraft load correctly. I know the Rangers were at the time they were doing like an average of we're average 250 pounds per man. And if I'm talking over the listener's head, you got to understand that when you're starting the party at 10,000 feet, a helo just does not have a lot of lift, and it cannot carry a lot of people. It's not like at sea level where it can carry 40 people. At 10,000 feet, it can carry 8 or whatever. I don't know the number. I'm making it up. But back then we did averages of operators. You'd have big guys that they probably weighed 315 with kit on. You had small guys like me, fully kitted out. I probably weighed 205, 210, because I was only 160 pounds. Had we done what we did later, which was we no shit would put a guy on a weight scale and be like, and write it down. What we know now is both with our helo and the Ranger QRF, we could have put 2 to 3 more soldiers or frogmen on those birds, which means, that's it. On a QRF for the Ranger, that's going to be 2 more AW gunners. So you got a lot more firepower now.
Well, Kyle, I was a pogue myself, but I'll never forget the first time when I was in Afghanistan where we were getting on a bird and they were putting us on scales. And I felt silly for going, man, what in the hell are we getting on these damn scales for? And then I did. Go ahead.
What year was that?
This would have been 2010, my first time over there.
There you go. That's the lesson learned that got applied.
Yep.
The other thing was like fuel and just superfluous shit in the birds. Like shit we didn't need for a 10-minute flight from Gardez. Did we need all the gas that we carried? And that was the thing for TF. They probably didn't need all that gas. If we'd taken so many gallons off, again, we put one more operator on the bird, we got another gun, which could have changed the tide of that thing completely. But, what you ended up with at the end of that, just on Takugar, you ended up with 2 Medal of Honor recipients, um, a handful of Silver Stars, I think an Army Distinguished Service Cross or 2. So I mean, a lot of heroism in that piece, and that was a very early part of the war.
Yeah, and I'm embarrassed to say I have a book on Anaconda downstairs, and I've got so many books I read, and a lot of it's on topics like this. I know what I'm going to read next for sure.
Well, I had an old Vietnam guy who was he was actually a plank owner at DEVGRU. He was actually still around. He, believe it or not, he finagled his way. He was still active duty, and he finagled his way to Afghanistan with us. He had been in like 36 or 37 years at that point. I mean, he was not operating. He was more of a talk guy, but I will never forget when we got pulled out of that and we were getting debriefed. We did the debrief afterward, and he made a point to say to us, he's like, "Hey, listen, and this was not at that exact moment. It was, a month or 2 later. And he's like, there's going to be shit written about this. It's just too big of an event, right? He's like, don't read that shit. He's like, if you read it, you're going to remember what you read in that book, and that book's going to be in your book stand, and you need to go with what you know. You know what I mean? And I will tell you that I've met people in the last 20 years, and Chuck and I have talked about this, where they say something and we're like, that's not what happened, like, and especially my team, because we were there before it actually the operation began, and we were there way after, because they just would not pull us out because there was no way to get us out. And hearing a lot of guys' memories, I can tell that I'm like, man, that's, and I would tell a couple people, actually, this is what, do you remember? And they're like, oh yeah, you're right. And I'm like, yeah, but how long have you been saying what you just said? Which was what was written in a book. And a lot of people, and another interesting thing about Anaconda is the amount of people that that we meet. And this is another thing Chuck and I have talked about, that we've met all 3,000 people that were there. That's the joke. Yeah, I mean, there were not. I mean,
yeah, exactly. That's what I was doing. Yep.
I mean, just all. And I'm not saying you guys put me on the spot, but just being put on the spot, I can damn near name all the guys who were killed. Not even really thinking about it, I could almost name all the guys who were there operationally. There was a lot of guys. They were in Gardez. They were back at Bagram. Were they in Anaconda? I don't know. I mean, I was on radio.
Yeah, there's a big difference, and I'm the first to say that I was in locations like you just said, Merez, Bagram, Kabul, goodness gracious, I spent a little bit of time, Kandahar, but yeah, I mean, I can't hold a candle to you guys, and never would attempt. Like I said, I was in support. So
hey man, like that doesn't mean nothing, man. Support is the name of the game, bro. Like, it's logistics wins wars, baby. It's
yeah, but you guys are the ones out there with your ass on the line, though. So,
I would be not here right now if it was not for the dude loading the bomb on the carrier, bro.
Yeah,
because I mean, we got into some situations where if those fast movers had not dropped when we told them to drop, there's no fucking way we're getting out of there. So
yeah,
I have appreciation for everybody who has served, man, woman, black, white, red, yellow. I don't give a shit. It's all the same to me.
Well, I'm absolutely glad to have been a part of all of it, and getting to serve with my brothers and sisters. I would do it again, of course. So yeah, now my son, I think we talked about last time, he's a Marine, and I do feel for him a little bit, because he wants so bad to deploy, and we're kind of more in peacetime, for lack of a better term, and deployments are few and far between. So, but he actually is in the middle of transferring, or trying to transfer to the Army, and 82nd specifically. He's hoping to get 82nd, because I'm stationed here at Bragg now as a civilian, and he's hoping get his family here.
Yeah.
So I'm praying for that myself.
You
So
know,
he may see some deployments under 82nd though.
What's cool is when you meet. I've met probably a half dozen people over my life that were in Anaconda, whether it was a pilot or an 82nd cat or whatever, and they remember the call sign and they remember, we're like, hey boys, this is going to be close. You know what I mean? Like, you guys really need to get down, shit like that, which is kind of cool, and again, we're almost at the 20-year mark now. It's going to be 20 years in March, so 4 months, 3.5 months from now, and I still.
Well, Kyle, I don't want to end on a negative note, but I think it's important to say, you probably more so than myself, but having done 2 deployments over there and seeing things pacify for the most part, I know that's, there's probably some out there that would say, that's not, it was never really pacified, but to me, man, to see us pull out the way we did, leaving $83 billion worth of equipment that we may all have to face again in the future. I just can't believe that happened that way. And, a major defeat in my eyes. It feels that way, at least.
Well, yeah. And the thing that I'm most upset about, I don't know about upset, that might be a strong word, but the thing that concerns me the most is that guys like us have given our children a war. Our kids have now inherited a conflict we didn't finish. And that's America's problem to begin with. I mean, since Vietnam, we can't finish. We're good at going in, and we're good at actions on. We are horrible at the end state of a conflict. And, I have friends who their legacies, their dad was a SEAL, served in Afghanistan. Their kid was a SEAL, served in Afghanistan. And I'm just like, man, that should not happen, bro.
Agreed.
So yeah, I'd like to see that change, but who knows?
Now, let's get to the point where it's my favorite question, and I believe the most important question on the show, which is, what are your 3 top bands or top musicians?
Ooh, I knew this was coming. You guys told me last time, and then I don't know whatever happened. We didn't do it, but so it's not hard for me. Now, here's how I got to preface it though. Here's how I got to lead the listener and the viewer into this. So that motorcycle I bought in March. I bought that right after we did that podcast.
Oh wow!
And it had 1,500 miles on it when I got it. It has 11,000 on it now.
Wow.
So roughly 10,000 miles.
For a motorcycle, that's a lot.
Since March.
Yeah, that's crazy.
My truck I bought in December of last year. It has 34,000 miles on it in 1 year.
Wow.
You're looking at 44,000 miles in a vehicle of some kind. So when people say I listen to music, and I'm like, dude, I listen to music, bro. Like,
rock on.
I'm doing 45 to 50 grand, and really, you got to give me till March with this thing, because the reality is I'm probably at about 55,000 miles in a calendar year of driving, not counting rental car shit on places that I fly to. So I'm listening to tunes a lot. All right, so I can't do top 3 musicians without doing different genres. I can't do it.
There you go. Let's hear it.
But I will go with this. My number 1 favorite musician of all time, Pepper Keenan, Corrosion of Conformity and Down. And
awesome.
Nice.
I mean, a lot of people know that Pepper and I are friends, but he's as real as it gets, you know what I mean? And I love the songs. So he would be number 1. And then everything after that is like genre. So I got to start when I was born in the 70s. So I gotta have my Fleetwood Mac, my Eagles, and my Leonard Skinner. That has
Nice.
to happen.
I love me some Skinner, man.
Because I mean, I'm from Alabama, so they sang about my freaking state, man. It's on our damn. When you come into the state on any interstate, it says "Welcome to Sweet Home Alabama." Swear to God.
Nice.
Then I also have to give a little bit of credence to the Grateful Dead.
Wow.
Huge Grateful Dead fan. Always have
Awesome.
been my whole life. I did get to see them in concert post Jerry, though. Jerry was already dead. But so I got to give them Grateful Dead and the band.
Wow.
So I gotta hit that's my 70s, right?
That's super cool.
On the countryside is deep. So we've got the top 3 are difficult. So I got to do it like this. Number 1 is the Highwaymen. But it's all of them together. It's Chris Christopherson, Waylon Jennings, Johnny Cash, and Willie Nelson.
Aaron, didn't Lee Weems bring Highwaymen up? I think I may be wrong, but I think he did on his show. Yeah, go ahead, Kyle. I'm sorry. When you said that, I was like, yeah, I think he mentioned.
So that's like number 1 in country, but it's all 4 of them. You know what I mean? Number 2 is Dwight Yoakam.
Okay, yeah,
nice.
And number
Talented
3
dude.
is a new guy. Number 3 is a new guy, Coulter Wall.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I like him definitely.
So my son is learning Coulter Wall on the guitar. It is fantastic, man. He can, man. I wish if he was down here, I would make him play something for you guys.
Young man after Aaron's heart.
Oh my God, dude!
Speaking of country, see, there's a Telecaster God's country guitar right there.
So listen, don't. I gotta whisper this, but we bought him a Telecaster for Christmas. He doesn't know it yet.
Man, awesome.
Man, I'll tell you real quick. We don't want to get off, but the Telecaster. If I had to pick let me just put it this way: the Glock 19 of guitars, it's a Tele.
Yeah,
can play almost anything. Sound great: country, jazz, rock. Heck, man, John 5 from Marilyn Manson plays and does all kinds of music. Ozzy, I think he's played with, but yeah, all on a Tele. So That's cool, man. He's gonna dig it.
So then we roll into like when I was in high school, coming into the SEAL teams. Grunge was a thing, right? I mean, that's my generation. It's our generation, right? We're basically the same age.
Oh, absolutely.
So Alice in Chains is number 1.
Nice.
One
of our favorites.
Pearl Jam is number 2, even though I do understand Eddie Vedder's politics, but I have seen him in concert twice, and I got to tell you, that motherfucker can sing. Period.
They're talented musicians. You cannot take that away from them.
Yep. Fucking 3 hours and you're never bored, right? And I got to put Nirvana in there because I still watch Dave Grohl. You ever seen Dave Grohl in a Foo Fighters concert? He'll do just the drumming section of "Smells Like Teen Spirit."
Oh yeah,
dude.
I've never seen him do that, but
I get fucking chills. Now, also in the 80s, because I was a kid of MTV, right? Even though I didn't have MTV because I lived out in the middle of fucking nowhere. But like my buddies that lived in town had it. So ZZ Top they get their own section. It's just like fucking ZZ Top. I mean, I don't know what to tell you.
Love ZZ Top for sure.
Dude, you got to have ZZ Top. And then the last thing, which is going to be odd, I'm going to lose followers on this one. This is going to piss people off. Is my rap. Because again, dude, grew up 80s, 90s, bro. Like I saw that. We saw that shit happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you guys know who Bill Blowers is? Tap Rack Tactical.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Bill.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I had Bill come out and do a job with me because I needed a cop who could actually shoot and shit. And I introduced Bill, but Bill listens to gangster rap. He's our age too. And so my gangster rap thing, or rap, I just call it rap, whatever. I'm gonna blow people's mind here. People need to Google this shit when I get done. All right, here we go. Number one, NWA, all members. Right, so you got Eazy-E, MC Ren, Ice Cube, Dr. Dre, DJ Yella. And I got a story on that I'll come back to. Number two, a guy by the name of Mac 10.
Mac 10.
That's who I introduced Bill to. And third is a guy by the name of Dub C. WC. He just goes by Dub C. People need to Google that shit, man. Now, Mac 10 and Dub C are real. Now, when I say
I'll look them up.
Mac 10 and Dub C are real, and when I say real, I mean like real. Like rapping is like a secondary thing for them, if you know what I'm saying.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Gotcha.
So they're real deal. So here's the story. My sister, when she graduated college in Alabama, she was living in Birmingham. She worked as a paralegal, and this was in 90. I think it was 90 or 91. NWA did the world tour. So Eazy-E ended up getting some chick pregnant in Birmingham, right? So that chick needed a lawyer to sue him, right, for paternity or whatever. So it was my sister's law firm.
Oh, wow.
So I'm like in high school, right? I'm like in 10th grade or some shit. So my sister like calls the house one day. She's like, "Hey, what's that rap group you listen to?" And I'm like, "Fucking NWA, you know, like that's it." She's like, "Yeah, those guys are here right now." I'm like, "What?" She's like, "Yeah, the guy his name is Eric Wright." I'm like, "That's fucking Eazy-E," you know? I'm like, "You got to go in there and get me an autograph." She's like, "I'm a paralegal. I'm like nothing here. Like, I can't do that." I'm like, no, you have to. Like, I have to have this. And listeners got to understand, this is pre-internet. There's no way to look at these guys, right? Or whatever. But she ended up going in there and getting me a signed album copy so I got Eazy-E, MC Ren, Dr. Dre, and DJ Yella signed an album for me.
Wow.
To Kyle, stay cool.
That's a crazy story.
My son, this is fun info. My son was out in he saved up some cash and bought a little bit older Cadillac STS. And I just had to text him about an hour ago saying, "Son, turn down the music." I'm just saying he's gonna dig the story about NWA because he's into some rap himself too.
Now you guys are from Oklahoma, is that right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Dude, Turnpike Troubadours.
Oh yeah.
Dude, love me some Turnpike Troubadours.
Awesome. Turnpike.
Are they Tulsa or Oklahoma City?
I can't remember, to be honest with you.
I would, me neither, but
one of the two.
The fact that the Turnpike kind of takes you right into to Oklahoma City, I'm just going to take a stab at guessing that's where they're from.
So here's my last story with music. So how Pepper and I met. This is now you want to talk about fucking small world. Here we go. So Pepper's always been like, I was always like a huge Corrosion fan since I was a kid, right? Corrosion and Down. And do you guys know the band Silence and Light? Because it's one of the members is a former Delta operator.
Oh yeah, yep, I do. My son sent me a couple of songs of theirs. Yep.
So Brad Thomas was in C Squadron, and I was in Red Squadron, and Red and C are like sister squadrons. We deployed together and all that shit. So I'm like scrolling fucking Instagram. I'm like in traffic, wherever one day, and I see Brad has a picture of him and Pepper backstage at a Corrosion concert. And so I text Brad, and I'm like, "Hey, dude, like, what the fuck, man? Like, that's my favorite man. That's my man. That's my boy." And Brad goes, "Well, yeah, I'll introduce you because Jason Everman and Pepper are real good friends." So you guys know who Jason Everman is?
Oh yeah, he used to be the bass player of Nirvana, right?
He was with Nirvana and Soundgarden.
That's right. He was with Soundgarden.
And then when the GWAT broke out, he's like, man, I'm going in the fucking Army. I'm going to be a Green Beret and fucking do my shit. And he
freaking
did.
got after it, man.
He got after it.
Impressive story.
So Pepper and Jason toured together in the 90s when Nirvana and Corrosion were kind of, coming up. So Brad calls Jason. Jason calls Pepper. Hey, this guy, whatever, he's a big fan, wants to meet you. He's not a fucking stalker, yada, yada. That shit. And so that's how I originally met Pepper. I was doing a class in New Orleans. Pepper lives in New Orleans. So, yeah, fucking Jason gave Pep my number. And, dude, I'm down there, like, I got off the plane, like, getting my rental car, and my phone rings. I'm like, I don't know the number. And I do not answer a number I don't know, but I was like, yeah, better answer it, right? And I answered. Pepper's like, hey, this is Pepper Keenan. Who's this? That's actually how we met. And then
Very cool.
We proceeded to drink a case and a half of beer that night at his house, and we both got nine-eyed drunk and passed out.
Sounds like you guys got after it in another way. Man, what awesome stories about music. And Aaron, I think Kyle has the record for number one, the genres, number two, the variety, and just, man, really brought it on the music. Big time.
Yeah. We've got, I think my next favorite was maybe Paul Sharp, because he and I like a lot of the same music. But yeah, you're number one, Kyle. No smoke blowing here. That's some good stuff.
Here's one more thing for you. Listeners got to hear this. Of all the people I just named, if I gave you 10 guesses as to who has given the most time and money to the USO, who would you say?
Man, I'd draw a blank, honestly, myself.
Yeah, that's tough.
And I should know.
Stevie Nicks.
Wow.
Man.
Yeah, you would not at all guess that for sure.
She keeps it way low profile. She was providing iPods for like every wounded guy in Walter Reed for like years with preloaded music.
Man, that's incredible. That's a great story. Our audience is going to dig that for sure.
Yeah. So, yeah, pretty cool.
Very cool.
Man, this has been fun, Kyle. And I think, again, we're just going to have to keep bringing you back, man. We'll just come up with a subject and we'll just knock it out of the park like you did this evening, brother. Thank you so much for the support.
Hey, man. Thank you guys for having me. It was cool, man. I appreciate it. It means a lot. If people are interested, that's cool. And
awesome.
And yeah,
they are. Your downloads, like I said earlier, pre-show, there's only two people that have as high. You and one other person have the highest downloads on our show. So, man, awesome. Well, Kyle, we're going to go ahead and say good evening, and you have a blessed one with your family, and thanks for keeping folks out there, law enforcement, civilian, military, man, harder to kill, man. It's guys like you that are helping hugely with that, and thank you for that.
Hey, my pleasure, man. That's what I do. That's all I know. I appreciate everybody who interested in me and classes and all that. And yeah, thank you guys for the opportunity of being on here. I really
and real quick on that note, and I'll have all your contact information, but just throw your website and your Instagram or your Facebook out there so people can find you.
Instagram, Defoor-Proformance shooting. And it's purposely misspelled. It's Proformance, not performance. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. I think that's about it. But yeah, we're out there. I got a website for sign up for classes, and it's got some shooting tests on it and some articles and stuff like that. And yeah, man, just Google my name, you'll find me.
Oh, you'll find it if you just put in Defoor-Proformance shooting. You'll find it, no problem. And I'll have it in the show notes, all of that. So, well, I guess we'll go ahead and say good evening. Kyle, you have a blessed one, brother.
All right, man. Thank you guys. See ya.
Take it easy, Kyle.